Good morning. My name is Kate O'Shea. I'm going to read the first part of our vision statement and then offer some words. We are a welcoming community of faith. Oh, no. Yep. We are a welcoming community of faith that works to dismantle oppression and privilege within our congregation by removing obstacles to entering and using our campus. To this end, our campus is accessible to all by including elements needed for our programs and services to meet various accessibility needs. Our campus provides a clear welcome, offering a sense of warmth, belonging, acceptance, and safety to all who pass or enter. Okay, so before I read my reflection, I'm actually going to add a little disclaimer. Writing this reflection for me was nearly an impossible task. I love to write and craft a message, not so with this reflection. I felt that the editing process and reducing it to 300 words removed more than I wanted it to. So I have 3 quick bullet points I'm just going to toss out there before I read my reflection. 1, I chose the word disability because it's a commonly used term. I prefer to call my diagnosis a difference, and I invite you to substitute language that you are most comfortable with. My reflection does not fully capture life with my diagnosis. It can be a gift, an obstacle to overcome. I can be frustrated to tears and challenged to find creative solutions. And our friends on the AV team are entirely blameless. My reflection. When I originally started writing, I thought I needed to name and explain the mechanics of my disability. But it is not through naming of a disability that we gain understanding, but rather when we start to define what we need in terms of accommodations that the work begins. I have a story that I hope illustrates one small piece of the puzzle that is my disability, and to highlight why intentional inclusive design matters. We had recently introduced the screen on the wall of the sanctuary. I am in the balcony and I'm having trouble reading the words. I go through an entire self-diagnostic process. Is it my contacts, an issue with my eyes, my brain? Why is this difficult? It can be very disconcerting. And it turned out what had happened was, in order to fit more words onto each slide, the character spacing between each letter had been reduced. I have a cognitive difference, and when letters and numbers are not presented in a certain way, my brain can have difficulty processing that information. And what I want you to understand is that it's not about character spacing, but rather how vitally important it is that when we take a holistic approach to design, and that the space is created to be both welcoming and usable, it is comfortable to occupy and easy to navigate. And when we commit to providing access in our vision statement, it means we are committing to building something far greater than 4 walls and a roof. And I refer back to our vision statement. Our campus will provide a clear welcome, offer a sense of warmth, belonging, acceptance, and safety to all who pass or enter our space.
In our worship spaces, we balance honoring our past with the flexibility needed for our diverse use and changing needs of our modern church, while inspiring wonder and authentic connection, courageous community, and love in action. This is Bob Sampson. That was the words for reflection number 2. I have some additional material for my own thoughts. Steve Eddington used to claim that I was a member of the original church building committee in 1827 when our church was built. That's not quite true, but I have been here for 88 of our 193 years. I do not remember when the pulpit was at the opposite end from where it is now. I do not remember when our pews had gates, nor do I remember when the church was heated with a stove long before steam heat had even been invented. My father remembered when a huge gas lighting fixture was replaced with electric lights. My father also remembered when the church was about 15 feet east of where it now stands. If you ever wondered why the granite steps coming up from Canal Street are not centered on the church, that's because they were centered when the church was built. Some years ago, I was talking to one of our youth groups about our history, and they asked me how the church got moved. I told them that one Sunday the congregation gathered around the foundation of the building, and when the minister gave the command, everybody lifted and moved the church 15 feet. It is a credit to our kids that one of them said, "Mr. Sampson, I don't believe that." As a child and youth, I spent many hours in our then new parish house built in 1929. This is where the Sunday school, as we then called it, met. It was also where Women's Alliance met in what we now call the Fellowship Room, and where the Layman's League met in what we now call the Youth Room. The Alliance and Layman's League were the men's and women's groups in the church and held monthly joint suppers prepared in a kitchen with wooden sinks and a special pie oven. The ladies had a little kitchen of their own if they chose to make tea and crumpets independently of the men. Excuse me. When Ed Cahill became our minister in 1947, he disliked the parsonage on Concord Street, also being the church office, and asked if somehow an office could be made for him and the newly hired church secretary in the parish house. There was a very large closet at the top of the stairs and adjacent to the Layman's League room. The building had two ladies' rooms, so the one opposite the closet was cleared of plumbing fixtures and became the minister's office. The high school youth class met with the minister for half an hour before services every Sunday, and these wonderful meetings have allowed me to say ever since that a valued part of my education was got in that rather unusual surrounding. I've already spoken about the Armory fire and building the White Wing, so before I tell any more stories, I'll give the pulpit to someone else.
Hi, Frank Grossman. We are good stewards of the earth, helping to combat climate change by working to limit our use of energy, using sustainable materials, and striving to obtain carbon neutrality. I am very excited about this paragraph of the vision statement. Our family has been working for years on energy efficiencies in buildings and solar projects. Is that working? Give me a thumbs up, Lindsay, if you can hear me. Okay, I'm just making sure. Although while working to get approvals for our solar farm, one of our neighbors who was not a fan of solar got up at a planning board meeting to say, if all the carbon put into the air every year was put into dump trucks and lined up for miles along the road, the work you are doing would only amount to 1 grain of sand in one of those trucks. And when you do the calculations, he was correct. We were not having a very big effect, at least by those calculations. But then, again, how much can one person do? It's difficult for one person to be more than 1/7.8 billionth of all the people on the earth. But movements are a wonderful thing. It has been shown that when one house puts up solar, then many of the neighbors follow suit. When all of us are able to talk about the beautiful looking building we go to that is also energy efficient and carbon neutral, then many others will realize that this is something they could do at their places of worship. When we do our part, not only do we get to walk into a warm and inviting church on a cold Sunday morning, we also join a movement that brings down the amount of carbons humans send into the air. And soon that one grain in a truck turns into a whole truckload of grains, and then into many truckloads. I'm excited that this church can become one of those grains that helps cause a chain reaction.
We effectively use technology to provide better access, enable many forms of communication throughout and beyond our buildings, and allow for greater flexibility for all. We have appropriate physical systems and to efficiently do the work of our mission. Wow, what an appropriate vision for what we are experiencing right now. Look at us. We are worshiping together through 79 different computer screens and phones from across Nashua and across the country. When we wrote this part of the vision statement back in March, we were just getting the first glimpse of what remote church looked like. And since then, there is so much we have learned about using technology to communicate and connect with each other. And we have all learned how important this connection is to our lives. If we've already experienced this in the last 6 months, can you imagine what we are going to need in 20 years? How important it is to make our church activities accessible to all through this technology. When I first joined the Board of Trustees 2 years ago, we were struggling to do anything slightly technological during our board meetings. The wireless connection barely reaches into the upper far corner of the parish house. And if we could get a trustee online, they were this small as we crowded around a laptop to hear and see them. If a trustee couldn't attend in person, oh well. But what if you were traveling for work, or immobile, or just had a baby, or in quarantine? Did this mean you couldn't participate? Over time, we found ways through technology to all meet together until COVID forced us to find a way. Don't we want to be prepared and ensure that anyone who wants to participate and be part of this church can, now and in the future? And even when COVID is a thing of the past, the expectation remains that we will continue the options for remote church activities so we continue to be more accessible to everyone.
In order to know our authentic UU Nashua identity, we honor those who helped create our story while embracing change in ourselves as we serve as stewards for our future. We honor the heritage of our campus, which serves as a visible connection to our past and to our future. Hi, I'm Rick Spitz, and I'm going to share with you the final portion of our vision statement and my thoughts on it. On September 11th, 1826, led by Daniel Abbott, a new society called the First Unitarian Congregational Society in Dunstable was formed. The following June, they completed their church meeting house. This was the birth of our beloved church and our current sanctuary. While the founders had Christian roots, they rejected creeds. They wanted to be an inclusive church with a liberal theology opposed to both the traditional views of God and of Orthodox Christianity. They wanted to be a living and working body that stood out as a religious force and nucleus for the welfare of the community and mankind. During this same period, a group of Universalists led by members of the Hunt family also began meeting. Starting in 1830, they actually jointly worshiped with our Unitarian founders, and later that decade built their own meeting house on Main Street in Nashua. By 1835, our Unitarian predecessors had formed a vibrant Sabbath school, which over the years educated many generations of children. Early on, music and singing was important to the congregation. They had already purchased a Handel and Haydn singing books and an organ. They also voted to use the land contiguous to their meeting house as a new Nashua cemetery. As Bob Sampson shared with us earlier, as the years went by, the Unitarians expanded and built a parish house to meet the needs of their growing church. Planning started in 1915, but was not completed until 1929, delayed by both World War I and the Spanish flu pandemic. Almost 30 years later, in 1957, the Nashua Unitarians and Universalists decided to consolidate, and they became the Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashua. Shortly after, in 1959, they built the White Wing Annex, helped by the proceeds of the sale of the old Universalist Church on Main Street. As we approach our 200th anniversary, we look back on a long, rich history. While much has changed, we also see how much in common we have with our predecessors. Now, as we look to the future, where will our generation be taking our church?
Before we sing our closing hymn, I wonder if there are any Lego or block creations out there of an amazing UU church, and can you hold them up and share them with the rest of the congregation? Ooh, oh wow, I see some. Look at that. Amazing, amazing churches, I see them. Beautiful. Thank you. Make sure you take a photo of your beautiful churches and send them to Sadie. Oh wow, that one looks awesome. Now, will you please join me in singing The Fire of Commitment?
From the light of days remembered burns a beacon bright and clear, guiding hands and hearts and spirits into faith set free from fear. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the stories of our living rings a song both brave and free, calling pilgrims still to witness to the life of liberty. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin. From the dreams of youthful vision comes a new prophetic voice, which demands a deeper justice built by our courageous choice. When the fire of commitment sets our mind and soul ablaze, when our hunger and our passion meet to call us on our way, when we live with deep assurance of the flame that burns within, then our promise finds fulfillment and our future can begin.
Thank you so much, Brenna Woods. That flame burns. We will not be stopped. In the spirit of the last part of our vision statement, to know our authentic UU Nashua identity by honoring those who helped create our story, let us hear the words of the Reverend Ed Cahill, our church's minister from 1947 to 1951. May the truth that makes us free, and the hope that never dies, and the love that casts out fear, lead us forward together until the day spring breaks and the shadows flee away. And while we toil amidst things as they are, may the vision of things yet to come strengthen and inspire us. After our song of parting, you will be sent into our fellowship hour breakout groups. Just stay on the call at the end of the service. A Building Our Vision team member will be in each of the breakout rooms. Feel free to ask us any questions about this service or about our conversations later this month. This is an important next step towards the special meeting vote on November 15th.